Okay, welcome to chapter 1, which is about early civilizations, as you can see from the title here. Now, I have this in a PDF so that it doesn't really kind of take up a whole lot of memory. So I'm going to kind of go through this as pretty quick, so I have to scroll through it. So just kind of be mindful about, about that. Now, there's three things that are going on in this chapter, okay? One, the first part of the chapter is the lead up to civilization. It is essentially the period of time that we call prehistory because it's happening before history. The definition of history is the study of the recorded past. So much of the early part of this chapter essentially is taking place before civilization and before history actually can take root. Remember that civilization, there are 7 things that have to show up for us to label something a civilization, and one of those things is writing. So anything that happened essentially before our ability to write is technically prehistory. So the first part of this chapter essentially is dealing with the things that are happening before civilization occurs. Our evolution from Africa to what modern humans are, the development of us standing upright, our really hunting and gathering, the development of Neanderthals before they go extinct about 40,000 years ago, the expansion of modern humans from Africa, especially Homo sapiens, who will then go out to populate the world. The cave paintings from Lascaux, you can see that there, okay? But then we get to this moment in this prehistoric period where we give up hunting and gathering and we start to settle down. It's called the Neolithic Revolution. It takes place during the New Stone Age period. And we start to settle down. In order to do that, we have to learn to start farming. So sometimes the Neolithic Revolution is called the Agricultural Revolution because human beings stop wandering around. They settle into communities and they learn to domesticate animals and plants. They start developing towns like Jericho or Catalhoyuk. And then they start to practice system, stabilized, settled agriculture. That's going to pave the way to civilization, which is why they call it the building blocks here. Okay, so Jericho in modern day Israel and Palestine is a good example of a Neolithic community where they built walls, supported about 3,000 or so people. Okay, in Catalhoyuk, you have basically a religious site. Now, there's still a lot of work being done on Catalhoyuk, and so it actually is much more than just a religious site. It is an organized sort of Neolithic community. I told you that we have to get to agriculture, and that's going to take place in places that can really support it. Our first river civilizations that we look at are Egypt and Mesopotamia, these two areas right here. Egypt is going to develop around the Nile River. Mesopotamia is going to develop right here between the Tigris and the Euphrates rivers. So this is one of those things. As we start to become more agricultural, as we start to settle down, we become more interested in trade. So that's kind of where they're going with this, okay? And there is a real movement here that we start to see going on in Mesopotamia. And these are farming places. They've been farming places much longer than they were before they were civilizations. So there's things going on between the Tigris and the Euphrates. We've learned to irrigate. We've learned to domesticate plants and animals. We are basically building better buildings. We're using mud bricks, all of these other things. And so we're building a city, essentially. So Uruk is one of those good examples. Okay. So between 4,300, 2,900 or so BC, really the city of Mesopotamia grows. Okay, it develops a priest class. All right, you've got farming going on to support it. You've got trade going on to support it. You've got them building temples. All of those things seem to indicate that they are making their way towards civilization. But remember, I told you one of the keys to all this is this: you got to be able to write. Okay, and so once we start moving towards writing, then you're going to see civilization start to creep in. And in Mesopotamia, that system of writing is called cuneiform. It is it's the best system that they could come up with to use for what they had, which was basically mud bricks, clay tablets. So cuneiform looks like this, okay? And it's a system of writing that developed in Mesopotamia during that period. Look, they didn't call it cuneiform. We call it cuneiform. Cuneiform is two Latin words, cunios and forma, meaning wedge-shaped. All right, but it is Sumerian writing. It is Mesopotamian writing. And it's one of those that kind of shows you how advanced, and you can see the difference between this early piece here and this later piece here about how it advances. And look, you can look right here, and you can see this is an agricultural record. I mean, the pictographs look like they are an agricultural record. You need agricultural records so that you can tax, so that you can see what you're raising, what you're being successful at, what you need more of. So that's one of the great purposes of writing. So from here, we start, now that we've sort of gotten to this edge of civilization, we're going to take a look at two. The chapter is going to take a look at two. One is Mesopotamia. The other is Egypt. All right, so you're going to get introduced to the first of really the two great river civilizations right in this first chapter. One is Sumer, one is Egypt, or one is Mesopotamia, and one is Egypt. The Sumerian area is the first. It's in the south. It's the nearest to where the Tigris and Euphrates empty out in the Red Sea. So this is, I'm going to go back up to the map real quick to kind of make sure you understand that, or sorry, into the Persian Gulf. I said the Red Sea. I'm sorry, into the Persian Gulf. That right here is kind of where Sumer is. It's this southern area right down here. And that's where really Mesopotamian civilization began. So you're going to look at the Sumerians first, what they were able to do, how they governed themselves, how they wrote. You're going to read about the reign, or excuse me, about the, later on you're going to read about the Epic of Gilgamesh, okay, and things like that. So you're talking about development going on here. Remember, none of this happens unless you have the ability to farm. And this area is very fertile. It's part of this fertile crescent that you see here. It kind of flows down the Tigris right here. And this is Sumer, where I was telling you early on. Okay, the Sumerians are pretty advanced. Okay, they were making bronze. They were making pottery. They were doing things. They had a priest class. They have a religion. They were polytheistic. They worshipped many gods. Okay, they were, like I told you, agricultural. Okay, and everything went great until there was some sort of kind of climate shift for a while, and then you have them being invaded by the Akkadians. Sargon and the Akkadians invade. They take over Sumer and technically unite Mesopotamia into its first real Mesopotamian empire under Sargon. Okay, and it doesn't last very long, but it does happen. And then after the Akkadians, you end up with the Amorites, which are the Babylonians. They will take over this area and develop a massive trading area in this area. One of the things that they were able to do, and one of the things that really indicates just how advanced they were, is they were building monuments like the ziggurats. And we, of course, see this later in Egypt when we talk about the pyramids there, and, of course, temples as well. But the ziggurats are stepped pyramids, and they're temples. That's what they are designed to be. So you can see them advancing, becoming very civilized, if you want to think of it that way. During the Babylonian kingdom, you have the reign of Hammurabi. Hammurabi will create a law code. It's not the first law code, all right, but it is an important one. And Hammurabi's code is a looking glass. It's a primary source. It looks back into that time. And if you're interested, go and read some of the laws from Hammurabi's code. You can Google it if you want to see more than just what's in the textbook. and go and read it and talk. And it tells you the laws about slavery, about marriage, about punishments, which are usually very harsh. Then we move on, okay, after a little bit, there's the code, that's the stela where the code is written, okay. Then we move on to Egypt, okay, and the same thing, you're kind of go through this same process, all right. The beginnings of agriculture in Egypt, people moving in there, settling there, okay, settling along the Nile River, okay, learning to use the Nile River to irrigate crops and other things, the development of Pharaoh, all right, who is a god king, all right, and you will then move into Old Kingdom Egypt, the first real period in Egyptian history, where basically the pyramids are built, writing develops, hieroglyphs are the writing style that you see in Egypt, okay, but there's also other scripts that develop as well, all right, as you can see here on the Rosetta Stone. Those are the hieroglyphs up at the top here, okay. So you can see some of the different kinds there on that slide, okay. So the building of the pyramids are tombs for the pharaohs, and which shows you just how important the Egyptian god king was. So make sure that you understand why Pharaoh is considered to be a god and a king. First steps are step pyramids, okay, like you see here. But then you're going to see them get much better, and this is what you end up with, the Giza complex, including the Great Pyramid, which is back here. These pyramids, we still debate them about how they built them. They are extremely well engineered, okay? And remember, they are tombs. They are simply, basically, these huge constructions that are essentially tombs for the pharaohs. From there, you move to the end of the Old Kingdom, the invasion of the Hyksos, okay? There's a little bit of information about Egyptian religion that you ought to be aware of, all right? And basically, Egyptian religion is much more optimistic than religion was in Mesopotamia. So kind of be looking for why you think that happens, all right? And you move on eventually to get to the Middle Kingdom. And then you're going to finish up talking a little bit about the end and moving towards the end of Egypt. And maybe later on we're going to move into the New Kingdom part of Egypt. So you're going to get introduced to in this first chapter to basically three things: the move towards civilization and our first two real civilizations. All right, Sumer in Mesopotamia, and then later in Egypt. So I hope that helps out, okay, as you read. Remember, I told you guys that you probably want to print out the outline or this PowerPoint, or you can take notes as you read. That's the only way that you're going to be able to generate material that you're going to need to study. So make sure you're writing down important things, definitions that you come across in the chapter, important terms that you come across in the chapter, because you're going to see those on your inquisitive assignments. You're going to see those in the chapter quizzes that test your reading, okay? And you're going to see those on the exam as well. So I would make sure that as I read, I'd try to jot down some of the important stuff and generate my notes from there. All right.